We have multiple reports drop regarding the Toronto Raptors, and with the trade deadline just days away, we have some interesting insights in terms of their pursuit of Brandon Ingram, and very, very interesting updates regarding Chris Boucher, the Denver Nuggets, and interesting pieces that can come back to the Toronto Raptors. Also putting to rest some of the Jakob Poeltl nonsense that's going on out there at this point. So lots of stuff to sink our teeth into here now for this Toronto Raptors team, because of course, the NBA, there's been so many blockbuster moves, whether it's, the Luka, De'Aaron Fox, just had a Kyle Kuzma trade from the Milwaukee Bucks. So much going on across the NBA. The Raptors are still sneaky players out there at this year's trade deadline, so we're going to break down everything that's going on with this team. But without further ado, let's jump into it and hit that subscribe button. Don't let me forget it because, we're trying to grow this channel and we're giving you all the latest updates regarding this Toronto Raptors squad. But let's dive into the madness as basically we all know this. Updates have come out from multiple sources that Boucher has fans within the Nuggets organization. Another report from Matt Moore said that two teams interested in Chris Boucher, who has the Sixth Man of the Year candidates, are the San Antonio Spurs and the Denver Nuggets. The Spurs are ready to upgrade their non-Wemby minutes at center, and Denver desperately needs more rotation players. So this isn't novel. We know that there's a lot of teams interested in Chris Boucher. Nothing crazy, nothing new here at this point, specifically the Denver Nuggets. But the Nuggets especially have been the team that's most linked, most associated to Chris Boucher, but they don't have a lot of assets. They don't have a lot of draft capital. They don't have a lot of pieces that could make a ton of sense coming back to the Toronto Raptors that have been floated out to different trades. Now, Najee's a guy that has been brought up, but he's not going to be a guy that's that intriguing to Toronto Raptors fans. But there is another sort of route, a new avenue that has popped up for Chris Boucher trade today that I find a lot more interesting, the last bits of news that we've heard regarding Chris Boucher going to the Denver Nuggets. So let's break that down here, as basically we had this update regarding the Denver Nuggets, and if I have the right thing pressed and getting this going, essentially with Denver lacking draft capital to trade, teams have countered by asking for the availability of Denver's younger rotation players such as Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther. Now, Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther might not be the biggest names across the NBA. Without a doubt, two guys that are interesting pieces and, things along those lines. But this screams to me a deal Masai Ujiri is trying to get done, because both those guys have very, very high upside, and they've been playing well for the Denver Nuggets. Essentially, Julian Strawther I've been a big fan of him. He's 23 years old. He's dominant summer league games against the Toronto Raptors in previous seasons, but 9.4 points per game, 2.1 rebounds, 1.3 assists, shooting 37% from the three-point line, and shoots 56% out there on corner threes. Now, obviously, shooting percentages might be elevated playing alongside Nikola Jokic, all these types of dudes, but Julian Strawther is a guy that I am a massive fan of. He is 6'7", plays a position that is pretty loaded for this Raptors group, but especially if you have a guy like Bruce Brown going out or different pieces, having an elite three-point shooter that is only 22 years old here now at this point, is very much a player I'd be intrigued by to get back in a Chris Boucher trade. And he's pretty energetic. He's a spark plug off the bench. It's one of the reasons, because there was a lot of questions about the Denver Nuggets bench, coming into the season. Hey, how are things going to develop and stuff? The emergence of Julian Strawther has been a huge, huge positive. Of course, the Nuggets are trying to boost their front court depth, and that's why they're interested in Chris Boucher. So if they're interested in dealing off a Julian Strawther at that age, fits our timeline a lot better than the Denver Nuggets. They're in full-out win-now mode. I'd be very, very intrigued by a move such as that. Boucher also helps their defense much more than Strawther would. So that's an avenue there. And then also Peyton Watson, who is a guy that doesn't have as flashy of stats, but 6'8", only 22 years old, shoots 34% from the three-point line, shoots 46% on corner threes, 8 points, 3 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.2 blocks per game. So, Peyton Watson is very much another guy that's athletic, that can do a lot of stuff out there. He's versatile on the defensive end of the court, and is only 22 years old. So Boucher, at this very moment, is very much the better player than both of these guys, but both of these youngins, coming off the bench out there for the Denver Nuggets, have shown tremendous upside, flashes of brilliance for their squad, and the Toronto Raptors, who are a younger team out there in the NBA, adding a Peyton Watson or Julian Strawther in one of these trade packages would make it reasonable for me in terms of making a Chris Boucher trade happen if it is going to go down. Of course, Chris Boucher has been sat out of the most recent game for the Toronto Raptors, so the team, like the Raptors, are much better. Everyone talks about capture the flag and stuff like that. When Chris Boucher has been played over the past month, the Raptors have been doing no such things as capturing flags because again, Boucher has just had such an impact on winning. That would be a very, very valuable asset for the Denver Nuggets. Also gives them an expiring, so they have more flexibility out there for the future. And with how crazy the NBA has been, having flexibility is never a bad idea. It might be a stretch getting such a good young assets or a couple young assets for Chris Boucher, but I'd be very, very intrigued by and excited by this move and the news that's coming out surrounding it. But that's not the only update we do have out here with this Raptors group, as, of course, one name that has been tossed around a ton regarding this Raptors team is Brandon Ingram, who, according to recent reports, we're keeping an eye on the Raptors first and foremost. There is legit interest from Masai Ujiri. Ingram still has a very small chance of ending up with the Golden State Warriors if they strike out on KD and Jimmy, and there's also a chance of a deal going through with Atlanta. But first and foremost, the Toronto Raptors are the team that's being named for Brandon Ingram. Now, Ingram's a guy that's dealt with some injuries, has dealt with different stuff over the course of his career, but is still averages 22 points per game, 5.6 assists, 5.2 assists, 5.6 rebounds, and he does turn over the ball. He's not as great of a corner three shooter. He creates a lot of his shots just in his own right. Gets a lot of buckets for himself, but is only 27 years old, despite being in the NBA for a very, very long time. Is in a very desperate New Orleans Pelicans situation right now, and could be gotten for cheap because of the fact that he's an expensive contract and he's an expiring deal. So his impending contract is going to be pretty big, pretty lucrative. So the Toronto Raptors are making this move. They're making this deal for Brandon Ingram. Then it's with the idea in mind of bringing him back for future seasons, signing him to a longer-term contract. And it's much easier to sign a guy that's been within your organization, has had a feel for everything, rather than just getting them outright in free agency. And where the Raptors do have different guys out there that are tradable contracts, like don't trade RJ Barrett for this man. Do not do that, Masai Ujiri. I'm not a big fan of anything down that front, down that avenue, but Brandon Ingram coming in for the likes of like a Bruce Brown-esque Kelly Olynyk trade package, that is something that makes a ton of sense, and it makes sense for the New Orleans Pelicans because they want to get under that tax. They're a bad team right now. Taking a look, I flashed this up a couple times by accident, but basically the New Orleans Pelicans are the third worst team in the NBA, and they're over the tax. They have so many guys on their books that cost a lot of money, so that's very important because the repeater tax really handcuffs a lot of teams. So they want to get off that money. The Raptors, his value isn't high, so maybe the Raptors could kind of swoop in and get one of these deals rocketed. So that's something that's interesting there. The Raptors, of course, are lost again last night. Still very much in the mix for Cooper Flag for one of those bottom teams out there in the NBA, but interesting stuff going on there. And the last thing I do want to bring up is the stuff regarding Jakob Poeltl. Of course, he's a guy I don't want to trade for nothing, trade for peanuts, but him getting taken out halfway through the game, I saw a lot of stuff posted like, oh, Jakob Poeltl's getting traded. He has a legitimate hit pointer. I saved the screenshot, but it didn't actually come up. That's why I was actually pressing the raw buttons there. But basically, Josh Schulenberg revealed this is an actual injury. Sure, Jakob Poeltl could get traded, but his asking price is lucratively high. He was not pulled halfway through last night's game because a trade is imminent or anything along those lines. So just wanted to update everyone out there at that front. But let me know what you guys think about all the latest news, all the latest updates for this Toronto Raptors team. You guys the best thing as far. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.